You step onto the worn stone just as the last light slips behind the hills. Athens doesn't disappear into night the way you expected. It lingers, warmth still held in the ground beneath your feet. Voices not gone, only quieter. You've read about this city your whole life. The philosophers, the temples, the place where everything seemed to begin. But standing here now, it doesn't feel like history at all. It feels close, lived in, real in a way the pages never were. A voice drifts from somewhere behind a wall, followed by the soft clink of pottery. Someone is still finishing their evening, and for the first time, you're not looking at Athens as something that was. You're standing inside it, while it's still alive. The street slopes gently beneath your feet. Uneven stone, worn smooth where countless sandals have passed over it. Each step shaped by repetition rather than design. The walls on either side rise close, pale and rough, still holding the warmth of the day, releasing it slowly into the cooling air. You notice it immediately, the way the heat lingers here, trapped between the narrow buildings, as though the city itself is slow to let the day go. A man moves ahead of you, not hurried, not slow, just steady. A folded cloak rests over one shoulder, the fabric shifting slightly as he walks. His sandals make almost no sound against the stone, and yet you hear him. A soft rhythm, just enough to remind you that this place is not empty. He reaches a doorway and disappears inside without looking back. The wooden door doesn't close fully. It settles into place with a quiet weight, and a thin line of light remains at the threshold. The smell reaches you a moment later, stronger now. Fresh bread, still warm, olive oil, sharp and familiar, and something richer beneath it. Slow-cooked, heavy, the kind of meal that doesn't need to be rushed. You pause for just a moment, not long enough to stop, but long enough to notice how different it feels from what you imagined. You expected something distant, something preserved, but this is close, immediate, a place where people are still eating, still speaking, still moving through their evening as if history has nothing to do with them. You continue forward, the street narrowing slightly, the buildings rising higher. Upper windows now dark, but not empty. You can feel it, life still held behind those walls, not visible, but present. A faint voice drifts down from somewhere above, followed by a short reply, then quiet again. Not silence, just the kind of pause that belongs to conversation. The ground beneath your feet changes slightly, more even here, the stones set with greater care. And you begin to notice something else. Grooves, shallow, worn into the surface, not random, placed there by wheels, passing over the same path again and again. You've seen markings like this before, in photographs, in ruins, but here, they're not relics. They're still in use, still part of the living city. A soft glow appears ahead, a clay oil lamp fixed to the wall. Its flame small, steady. The light doesn't spread far, only enough to catch the edge of the stone, the worn threshold beneath it. As you pass, the warmth shifts slightly across your hands, then fades again behind you. The air changes with it, cooler now, carrying less of the trapped heat, more of the night settling in. From somewhere further down the street, laughter breaks briefly, not loud, not careless, just a moment that escapes before it can be held back. It fades quickly, but not completely. The feeling of it remains, the sense that the city is not winding down, only softening. You move toward a wider space where the street opens slightly. Not a square, not quite a gathering place. Just enough room for the walls to step back. The ground here is smoother, more worn, and for a moment, the city feels clearer, more visible. The shapes of the buildings, the edges of the street, the soft glow of light spilling from somewhere unseen. And then, just as quickly, it narrows again, the city folding back into itself. You begin to notice how often this happens. Open space, then close again. Light, then shadow. Voices, then quiet. A rhythm, not planned, but consistent. As though the city breathes in and out, without ever fully stopping. The slope begins to rise more noticeably now, not steep, but enough that you feel it in your steps. And as the buildings thin slightly, you catch it, just for a moment, above the rooftops, the outline of something larger. Columns, pale against the darkening sky. You slow, not because you need to, but because something about it feels familiar. You've seen that shape before, broken, incomplete, but here it stands whole. You don't need to name it, you already know. The Acropolis. It doesn't dominate the city the way you expected. It rests above it, present, unmoving, as though everything below simply exists in relation to it. A woman passes beside you, a small clay lamp cupped carefully in her hands. The flame flickers as she moves, casting brief shadows across the stone. She doesn't look at you, only continues upward. The faint scent of wine follows her for a moment, then disappears. You continue after her, not following, just moving in the same direction, the city drawing you forward without asking. And for the first time, you begin to understand something you never noticed before. This place was never meant to be seen as a memory. It was meant to be lived in, one quiet evening at a time. The slope becomes more noticeable as you continue. Not steep enough to slow you, but enough that each step feels more deliberate, as though the city itself is guiding you upward without needing to ask. The buildings thin just slightly, not enough to open the space fully, only enough that the sky begins to show between them. Darker now, the last trace of light fading, and the air shifts with it, cooler, carrying less of the heat trapped in the stone below, more of the night settling into place. A doorway stands open to your right, not wide, just enough that the light from inside spills across the threshold. You don't stop, but you glance in as you pass. A low table, clay bowls, someone seated just beyond the light, their shape half hidden. A voice, soft, steady, the rhythm of words rather than meaning. Another reply follows, quieter, then the sound of something being set down, the dull weight of pottery against wood. You move past, but the warmth lingers behind you, carried into the street, mixed with the smell of oil, herbs, and something roasted earlier in the evening. The kind of scent that settles into the air long after the meal has ended. Further ahead, the street bends slightly, not sharply, only enough that what lies beyond it isn't revealed all at once. The lamp fixed near the corner burns lower than the others, its flame smaller, as though it has been left unattended for some time. The light it casts is uneven, breaking across the stone in soft fragments. As you pass it, the shadows shift briefly, then settle again. The bend reveals another stretch of street, wider than the last, the walls stepping back just enough that the space feels less contained. And here, there are more people. Not many, only a few, moving slowly. A man crosses ahead of you, carrying something wrapped in cloth, held close to his chest. He walks with care, not hurried, but focused. He disappears down a narrower passage without a word. A moment later, you hear it, a door opening, then closing again, soft, practiced, the sound of someone arriving home. A pair of voices rise briefly from further down the street, then fall again. Not an argument, not a conversation meant to be heard, just something that exists, then fades. The ground beneath you changes again, the stone more carefully set here, smoother, less worn by irregular movement, as though this part of the city carries a different kind of importance. You've read about places like this, the central spaces, the areas where everything seemed to gather. But here, now, it doesn't feel important in the way you expected. It feels ordinary, used, part of a rhythm that continues whether anyone is watching or not. The outline above the rooftops becomes clearer now, the columns more defined, more present. You can see the structure of it, not broken, not faded, but complete. The Acropolis no longer feels distant. It feels near enough that you could reach it, given enough time. A woman stands near the edge of the street ahead, her back turned, a clay jar resting against her hip. She adjusts it slightly, the movement small, habitual, then continues on. The faint sound of liquid shifting inside the jar follows her steps. Water or wine, It doesn't matter. Only that it's part of something ongoing, part of a life that exists beyond this moment. You pass the place where she stood, and the ground rises again, more gently now, but steadily. The buildings begin to change, less crowded, more space between them, walls that feel more deliberate, more carefully placed, the kind of construction that doesn't happen by chance. A low wall appears to your left. Beyond it, the ground drops slightly, and you can see further across the city. Roofs, stone, scattered lights still burning in the distance. Athens stretching outward, not silent, not asleep, only quieter, as though the entire city has slowed at the same time. A breeze moves through the space, stronger here, less trapped by the walls, carrying with it the scent of the city below. Smoke, food, stone cooling after the heat of the day. It passes quickly, then disappears, leaving the air still again. You turn slightly, and for the first time, you see the path upward more clearly. Not marked, not guided, but present, a natural continuation, the way the streets align, the way the slope carries forward, everything leading in the same direction, toward the rise above, toward the place you've only known in fragments. The city doesn't push you toward it. It doesn't draw attention to it. It simply allows you to notice. And once you do, it's impossible to ignore. You continue, not because you have decided to go there, but because everything around you seems to be moving in that direction already, and you are simply part of it. The ground levels out as you reach the upper part of the city. The climb softens, not ending, but easing, and the space around you changes with it. The narrow streets begin to open, not suddenly, only enough that the buildings no longer press in as closely. The air moves more freely here, cooler, steadier, carrying less of the trapped warmth from below, more of the night settling into its place. The stone beneath your feet feels different, more deliberate, set with care, not worn unevenly, but shaped to hold its form. You're slow without meaning to, not because you are tired, but because the space itself feels different, less like something you pass through, more like something you enter. Ahead of you, the columns rise fully into view, no longer glimpsed between rooftops, no longer partial, but complete. The Acropolis stands above you now, not distant, not imagined, but real. Solid in a way that doesn't match the images you've seen before. You've seen it broken, you've seen it empty, you've seen it standing against a sky with nothing around it. But here, it belongs to the city, not separated from it, not preserved, but part of the same living place. A group stands near the base of one of the structures, not gathered, not observing, only lingering. One man speaks quietly, his voice steady, measured. Another listens, adjusting the fold of his cloak against the cooling air. A third shifts his weight slightly. The soft scrape of sandal against stone carries just enough to be heard. No one looks upward in awe. No one stops to admire what stands around them, because to them, this is not something rare. It is simply where they are. A woman passes along the edge of the space, her steps careful, a small bundle carried in her arms, wrapped tightly in cloth. She moves past the columns without slowing, without hesitation, as though the place holds no more meaning for her than the street below. And that's when it settles in, the thing you didn't expect. This place, the one you've read about, imagined, pictured in fragments. It was never meant to feel distant. It was never meant to feel important in the way you were taught. It was just part of the city, part of daily life. The air here carries a different scent, less of food, less of smoke, more of stone, dry, clean, touched only faintly by the oil from nearby lamps. A small flame burns near the base of one column, set into a simple holder, not placed for display, only for use. The light rests against the stone, catching its surface, revealing the subtle marks left by time. Not damage, not decay, just the quiet record of years passing, while everything remained in place. You move closer, not drawn by anything specific, only by the sense that this is as far as the city intends to take you. The columns rise higher as you approach, their scale becoming clearer, not overwhelming, but undeniable. The way each piece fits into the next, held together not just by design, but by purpose. A faint breeze moves across the open space, stronger here, uninterrupted by narrow walls. It carries a brief echo of sound from below. A voice, distant now, a door closing, the city continuing, even while this place remains still. You pause, not because you need to, but because there is nowhere else to go, not in a physical sense, but in the way the moment feels complete. Everything you expected to find, everything you imagined, it's all here, but not in the way you thought. Not grand, not distant, not removed from life, just present, existing alongside everything else, the same way it always has. You glance once more across the space, at the people moving through it, at the lamps burning low, at the city stretching out below, still alive, still moving, still unaware that any of this will one day be remembered as something else, something finished, something studied. And for a moment, it's impossible to believe that will ever happen. Because here, right now, nothing feels like it's ending. You do not go any further. Not because there is a barrier, not because the path ends. Only because something in the moment tells you that you have already arrived where you were meant to arrive. The climb is behind you now. The city spread below. The columns rising beside you. The night gathered gently over all of it. And for a while, you simply remain there. Not still in the way a statue is still, only quiet, aware of everything around you, without needing to move through it anymore. The breeze that reaches this height is cooler than the air below, less touched by cooking fires and warm stone walls, though now and then it still carries traces of the city upward. Olive oil, smoke, the faint sweetness of wine. A smell that feels less like one thing than 100 evening meals slowly folding into night. A lamp burns near the base of the steps behind you. Another glows further off along the edge of the open space. Their light is small here, not enough to shape the whole place, only enough to touch stone, to hold a corner of the dark in place. It strikes you then how little of this city is meant to impress. Not in the way you expected. Not even here. You were prepared for greatness, for weight, for the feeling of standing in a place that knew what it would become. But Athens does not seem to know any of that. It simply exists, whole, lived in, unworried by the future. A pair of men pass at the far side of the space, their conversation low, not secretive, only private. One gestures briefly with a hand as he speaks, the movement small and practiced. The other lets out a short laugh, hardly more than breath. And both continue on, sandals brushing lightly against the stone before the sound disappears into the open air. You watch them go for a moment, not because they matter more than the temple or the height or the city spread beneath you, but because somehow they make all of it clearer. This is what the books never gave you. Not the names, not the dates, not the arguments of men whose thoughts survived longer than their voices. But this, a conversation after dark. Two men crossing stone without knowing they are walking through the part of history everyone else will remember. The city below has grown quieter, not silent, never that. From time to time, a sound still rises from the streets. The faint bark of a dog somewhere further down the slope. A door set back into its frame. The dull knock of wood against wood. A voice called once, then not repeated. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that asks to be followed. Only the ordinary sound of people finishing one day and stepping into the next. You turn slightly and look back across the rise of stone. The columns no longer feel like something you have approached. They feel like something that has been standing beside human life for so long that no one here thinks to separate the two. A temple, yes, but also a place passed by, spoken near, crossed beneath, lived around. You can see where the stone has worn more smooth in places, where steps have taken the same path often enough to leave a slight hollowing, where hands, maybe without thought, must have rested against the same surfaces over years and years. That matters more than you expected too, not because it proves age, but because it proves use. And use feels different from greatness. Use means belonging. Use means that whatever stands here is woven into the city below it, not lifted above it. A woman appears at the edge of the steps, not young, not old, wrapped against the evening air in a dark cloak that catches the low lamplight for only a moment. In one hand, she carries a shallow basket. Whatever is inside is covered with cloth. She climbs steadily, not slowly, not quickly, just with the ease of someone who has walked this path many times before. At the top, she pauses only briefly, long enough to adjust the basket against her hip, then moves on across the open space and disappears behind the stone beyond your view. The faint smell that follows her is simple and immediate. Bread and something salty, perhaps cheese, perhaps olives packed away for the night. Again, it is the ordinary thing that stays with you. Not ceremony, not grandeur, just the sense that people are still carrying food home, still stepping through the same night you are standing in. You think of every image you've ever seen of this place, all that empty stone under bright daylight, tourists, scaffolds, broken edges against blue sky, and it feels impossible that those fragments and this living moment belong to the same world. Here there are no signs telling you what matters, no explanations, no distance between the famous and the ordinary. The city does not present itself like a lesson. It reveals itself the way a real place does, in glimpses, in smells and sounds, in the way people ignore the things future centuries will cross oceans to see. That thought follows you as you begin to move again, not downward yet, not away, only a few slow steps along the edge of the space, enough to let the angle shift, enough to see the city below from a little differently. Athens stretches into the dark in folds of roof and wall and narrow rising streets. Here and there, small lamps still burn, not many, just enough to suggest where life continues behind doors not yet closed. You try to imagine what the city would feel like from below now, how the people in those houses think of the height you stand on, whether they glance upward at all, or whether it has been part of the shape of their lives for so long that it no longer catches their attention. That too feels important, that the extraordinary only becomes extraordinary at a distance. Up close, lived with, woven into habit, it becomes ordinary. And ordinary things are always harder to preserve in memory, which is why this moment feels so rare. Not because Athens is magnificent, though it is. Not because you are standing where so much once happened, though you are, but because for one brief stretch of night, you are seeing the city before anyone decided what part of it should matter most. You are seeing it while it still belongs entirely to itself. A breeze moves across the height again, cooler now, the kind that makes cloth shift softly against stone. The lamp nearest you flickers once, then steadies, and somewhere below, too far to place, someone begins to sing. Only a few notes, nothing formal, nothing performed, just a passing piece of melody offered to the dark and then gone. The sound rises, hangs for a moment, and disappears into the city. You do not try to follow it. You do not need to. It is already done enough. It has made the night feel even more inhabited, even more real. You find yourself smiling at that, not broadly, only with the quiet disbelief that comes when something turns out to be more human than you expected. That is what Athens has become now. Not the city of marble, not the city of philosophers, not the city reduced to what survived on the page, but a place where people laugh under their breath, carry baskets home, argue softly in passing, finish their meals late, close their doors, and let the night gather around them without ever imagining someone far away and far ahead in time will wish he could see exactly this. At last, you turn to look once more across the columns and the open height and the streets below, and you understand that what stays with you will not be one great image, not a single perfect view. It will be pieces, the bread on the air from the doorway below, the woman carrying her covered basket across the stone, the sound of pottery being set down behind a wall, the first glimpse of the Acropolis above the roofs, the way the city never once felt like a monument, only a place, alive enough to forget itself. That is what makes it beautiful, that it has not yet become memory. For a little while longer, it remains only this, a city at evening, a height of stone above narrow streets, a lamp burning low at the edge of the dark, and people living their lives beneath columns the future will name more carefully than they ever did. You stand there until the moment begins to loosen, not vanish, only soften, the way all real moments do when you know they are already becoming something you will try to hold on to later. The voices below grow fewer, the lamp seems smaller, the shape of the city settles into the dark, and Athens, alive and ordinary and impossible, remains with you for exactly what it is. Not a ruin, not a lesson, not a legend, just a city, at night, and for one brief hour, you were there.